Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to completely unpack the strategic mechanics behind one of the absolute most successful global retail strategies of our time, UNIQLO's pop-up shop playbook. We're going to break down exactly how this massive global brand uses tiny, temporary spaces not just to move inventory, but to gather absolute mountains of market intelligence. Okay, let's dive into this by challenging a really common assumption right out of the gate. When you hear the term pop-up shop, you probably immediately picture a temporary store that just opens for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, right? And sure, technically, that's completely accurate. But if you're only looking at it as a short-term place to sell things, you are missing a massive opportunity. For UNIQLO, a pop-up is so much more than that. It's actually a real-world marketing laboratory. To really grasp this, we need a complete paradigm shift. See, the old traditional retail mindset assumes a store is simply a place to sell. You spend a fortune building out a permanent location, you stock it with inventory, and you just kind of cross your fingers and hope it generates revenue. But UNIQLO completely flips this on its head. Their mindset, a store is a place to experiment. Because think about it, opening a permanent location requires a huge financial commitment. Rent, construction, staffing. What if you don't actually know for sure if the customers in that specific area even want your product? So how do you replace that incredibly risky build it and hope it sells model? Well, it's basically the scientific method. You start with a hypothesis about a new market. Then, instead of throwing down a major investment right away, you open a really small temporary pop-up. You watch how customers behave, you collect hard, real-world data, you evaluate those results, and only then do you decide your next steps. It dramatically reduces your financial risk while getting you genuine market validation. Moving on to our first major concept, product, place, and timing, or as we'll call it, the HEATTECH formula. Let's look at exactly how this plays out in the real world. Back in 2010, UNIQLO launched these highly targeted pop-ups specifically for their HEATTECH thermal innerwear, right inside major Japanese train stations like Shinjuku and Shinagawa. Now, I want you to really put yourself in the shoes of a commuter for a second. You leave your house on a harsh winter morning. It is absolutely freezing outside, you're shivering, and you're frankly kind of miserable. You walk into that busy transit hub, and at that exact moment of peak discomfort, boom, a HEATTECH pop-up is sitting right in front of you. You're freezing, you need to be warm, and the perfect solution is literally an arm's reach away. Having a great product isn't always enough. This was the brilliant intersection of product, place, and timing. Now, making a sale to that freezing commuter is fantastic, obviously, but these pop-ups are actually executing on 5 totally distinct strategic purposes all at once. Number 1, yeah, they're selling. But 2, they're testing out products and pricing. 3, they're building massive brand awareness for people who maybe didn't know them before. 4, they're creating a tactile physical experience. And 5, they're validating real, measurable demand before anyone signs a 10-year commercial lease. When you stack all those together, a pop-up becomes an absolute powerhouse of a strategy. Next up, Section 2, the store as media, focusing on Haneda Airport and the UT brand. So what really is a store if it isn't just a place to buy things? In 2012, UNIQLO opened up a pop-up in the international terminal of Tokyo's Haneda Airport, right past security in the duty-free zone. The craziest part, the size of this space was incredibly tiny. It was only about 6 tsubo, which is a Japanese measurement that equals roughly 215 square feet. To put that into perspective, that is basically the size of a standard one-bedroom apartment's bedroom. It's tiny. So you really have to ask yourself, was management's only objective to cram as much HEATTECH inventory as humanly possible inside a 215 square foot box? Absolutely not. International airports are massive funnels that bring together travelers from every corner of the globe. By placing a store there, the physical location itself functions as a global brand touchpoint and a media channel. An international traveler walks by, sees the branding, maybe grabs a shirt, remembers the name when they fly back home, and looks them up online. The true value of this tiny location wasn't just its sales per square foot, it was who actually saw the brand while walking by. We see the store as media concept escalate to a whole new level with UNIQLO's UT graphic t-shirt business. In 2013, they launched this massive temporary space in Shibuya, Tokyo. They displayed over 1,000 different designs and housed something like 12,000 shirts. But here's the kicker. They weren't just building a place to buy t-shirts, they built an experiential content generator. They turned an ordinary piece of clothing into a visual spectacle. Customers would come in, experience this wild visual layout, snap a bunch of photos, and immediately post them to Instagram or TikTok. The friends see it, they want to go, and the idea spreads like wildfire. The physical store literally became the advertising. And what is the secret sauce that makes these physical experiences so wildly effective? It's scarcity. Think about it. If a regular permanent store opens up near you, you might think, oh, cool, I'll go check that out next weekend. But when you intentionally stack these specific elements together, limited time, limited location, limited quantity, and exclusive products, consumer psychology completely flips. It screams, if I don't go right now, I am going to miss out. It creates this powerful urgency that permanent retail simply cannot replicate. Which leads us to section 3, beyond the initial sale. How we connect the physical right back to the digital. Okay, we know a pop-up eventually has to close. It disappears. So how do you make sure you capture all that amazing energy you just created? Well, physical retail and e-commerce absolutely must be deeply connected. They aren't competitors. If someone visits your pop-up, buys a shirt, and then you completely lose touch with them the day the store closes, you've lost the biggest value of the whole experiment. The physical experience is just the top of the funnel. You want to seamlessly transition them from a curious pop-up visitor to a registered member on your mobile app to an online buyer and ultimately into a long-term repeat customer. And looking at it this way completely reframes how we measure success. If you're only looking at the store profit generated during a brief one-week pop-up, your financial numbers might not look all that earth-shattering. But if you zoom out and look at customer lifetime value, or LTV, the whole picture changes. One single small purchase made at a tiny temporary store can lead to that exact customer joining your digital loyalty program and buying from your e-commerce site for years and years. The long-term value of that customer is exponentially higher than their very first transaction at the pop-up. Which brings us to arguably the most crucial question management absolutely most ask the moment a pop-up closes. Naturally, the first question everyone asks is, so how much did we sell? But the far more important question is, what did we learn? Who actually walked through the doors? What age group showed up? What time of day was busiest? What price points did people accept? How many converted into digital members? If you can answer these questions, your pop-up generated market intelligence. And trust me, that intelligence is way more valuable than short-term cash register receipts. Because all that gathered market intelligence goes right to work directly improving the 3 foundational pillars of your company's operating profit. Under sales, you're acquiring brand new customers and funneling them to your online store. For gross profit, because you actually tested real demand first, you know exactly what items people want. That means way less excess inventory and fewer painful price markdowns later on. And finally, for expenses, you are radically lowering your fixed cost risks because you avoided signing massive, expensive, multi-year leases for permanent stores that might fail. Let's bring it all home with our final section, Start Small, Learn Big. The absolute best part about all of this strategy isn't reserved exclusively for multi-billion-dollar giants like UNIQLO. Literally any brand can apply this exact blueprint. Imagine a young, digital-first fashion brand. The old way of expanding would be to take their strong social media following, immediately sign massive leases in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, and just pray that it works out. But the new way, the UNIQLO way, is a smart, calculated sequence. You build your fan base online, then you run a pop-up in LA, you run a pop-up in New York, you compare the data between the two, you validate where your actual strongest market is, and only then, armed with real data, do you invest heavily in a permanent physical store. This brings us to our ultimate definition, and really the core lesson I want you to take away from this explainer today. A pop-up is not simply a small temporary retail store. It is a physical marketing medium. It's a real-world laboratory that perfectly combines direct sales, critical market testing, customer acquisition, immersive brand experience, global media exposure, and vital data collection, all packed into one tiny physical footprint. And it really all boils down to this singular, incredibly powerful operating philosophy from UNIQLO. Start small, learn big. By stepping out with a very small physical footprint, you give yourself the opportunity to learn massive, game-changing lessons about your customers, your products, and your true market viability long before you ever commit to a large-scale rollout. So, as we wrap up our analysis today, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Look closely at your own business, your own side projects, or your own brand. Instead of taking these massive, risky leaps of faith, how will you use your next small experiment to learn something incredibly big? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this changes how you view the power of the physical marketing medium.